Dear Madam Speaker, we on the first proposition stand before you with a solution to a more than pressing problem. Of course, we're talking about gender equality. What a surprise. We think that what we propose to you today will, in the long term, solve the problems of pay gaps. It will solve the problem of women having not equal access to job opportunities. It will solve the problem of all people not having same rights. We want to basically establish the Nordic utopia all the other teams in the final legibly are enjoying currently to a wider perspective. So what basically we will do is, I think rather self-explanatory, from kindergarten we will make things gender neutral. For example, if we have cookbooks, right, we show men and women cooking both, or like both being builders. We have toys, we have playtime for boys and girls with dolls as well as with cars, all the really standard stuff, right? And we do think this is not a pragmatic debate about where is the state going to get the budget to actually buy new textbooks or educate new people. It's rather a question about how should our education system function and what benefits should it give us, right? So what I'm going to do in my speech is give you 3 points of analysis. Firstly, why kindergartens and states, a brief agent analysis. Secondly, talking about why we need to eradicate all stereotypes. And thirdly, why we want to establish gender neutrality as a philosophy, basically. Right? So why kindergartens? When a child goes to kindergarten, this is where the beliefs start to develop on a secondary social identity level, right? Because they are now new agents, because they are forced independently to interact with a social environment that they have to make decisions independently on. Not with their parents being beside them, not with their parents telling them what the world is, but they have to establish new connections, new interactions, and that is something that reformulates their current established belief system and advances it to the next level, right? We think that's why it's highly important when kids firstly come to this new social reality, which starts to assimilate to their previous existing identity, to give them the right message. Why the state and what message? Well, basically, this is really easy, right? We say the state should guarantee equal opportunities for everybody. So if we can show that actually establishing gender neutrality eradicates the detrimental stereotypes that our society currently has, we think it's a fine thing to advocate to young adults, children, and everybody else, right? But not what pressing matters. Firstly, why we want to eradicate stereotypes? Well, basically, we need to understand what stereotypes are. They're basically a construct of belief systems, right? I have some sort of associations between elements, characters, agents in our society. We say these sorts of belief systems formulate through your own experience, of course, but as well as they carry on through words. So basically, if somebody tells me somebody is a debt, for instance, then I might tend to believe them if they're a capable agent, right? So this is how we formulate some sort of picture, and we make decisions on the picture even if we don't have sufficient information. We just make assumptions on our previous experiences, right? So what does gender neutrality introduction uphold? Basically, the problem is that even if the opposition wants to come up here and say, no, we are all for equality, we shouldn't propagate gender neutrality, there's a huge issue on their side. The problem is that stereotypes work in associations, right? Let's say a stereotype about women is that they are stupid, they shouldn't be allowed to vote. That's really radical stereotypes, but like they are uneducated or less capable, and they're also portrayed they should be in the kitchen, right? Now, 2 of these stereotypes, the 2 first ones, are bad and might be eradicated with equality action policies. But being in a kitchen on its own is not something bad, right? The problem with stereotype is, however, if we just portray a woman cooking, it triggers all the associations between the established stereotypes that actually deprive women of equal recognition, right? So that is why, if we talk about like black people, if we use aggressive, like if we use the word nigger, it's not just, it's offensive because the associations link back to them being slaves, them being lesser, and that's why this is a powerful word used to subdue and suppress minorities. And that is why we don't use it. In the same way, we think we shouldn't advocate the beliefs that trigger the associations that are explicitly said through that message. So we think it's important to propagate gender neutrality to establish the overall eradication of the stereotypes that we currently have in our society.
surely the motion is not limited to just saying that the government shouldn't, aggressively campaign for women standing in the kitchen. We think that it sort of implies more severe action than that.
We think that we are all for affirmative action and such, which isn't this debate. The question is, if we take kids from a young age and expose them to a certain social construct, whether we will have good outcomes and whether this will benefit the general society and the principle base that our government... Sure.
Does that mean that, for example, a teacher is not allowed to call for a student by his gender, for example?
Yes, I'm not sure that's relevant. I think they should use names. That's nice. As I explained, stereotypes work in associations, therefore they need to be avoided. Now, why gender neutrality as a whole? The point is that since there are associations between stereotypes, they do not only legitimize each other, different stereotypes, but they also legitimize the idea that people can be placed into roles on arbitrary, non-decided criteria, right? So basically the problem is that if we take on this sort of mentality and teach even with harmless intent to use relatable associations in school, we still legitimize the idea that a gender, a race, a religion, or a sexuality is an okay basis to decide or to expect a person to earn a certain amount of money or to be in a specific role or to possess certain traits. We think that sort of expectation is what gives ground to new prejudices that might formulate as society advances. What Sila will elaborate on is the general advance in LGBT rights in a longer perspective that we will achieve through this. But to sum up this, but the main point is the idea that if we eradicate gender neutrality and expose both sexes in both stereotypical sex roles and force children to engage each other and the teachers in an environment which they are not segregated based on the, for instance, on the assumption that, like on stereotype that a girl should play with dolls and boys should play with cars, or that they could do both what they want because like they do have the package of stereotypes, they might have the package of stereotypes from home. So we need to forcefully engage that, and we think that the educational arena is where we already do it, because we advocate beliefs and values that are correct in our idea, world. We oppose racism publicly in schools and so on and so forth. So engaging them might possibly pre-formulated prejudices is totally legitimate, and it gives ground to overall acceptance of different people, and we make it basically establish meritocracy. And on those reasons and many more, I'm really proud to propose.